Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Favorite Albums Through the Decades, the show that we're doing throughout the month of March, where we take a look at a band who is around releasing albums in 3 or more decades. And we're going to pick our favorite album release from each of those decades. So in most cases, these are pretty notable bands who have been around for a while, right? So the trick is either just myself or me and a couple of guests are going to give you our favorite albums from each of the decades, and I will ask all of you to do the same in the comments below. So today, we're going to take a look at the U.S.'s very own progressive rock legends, Kansas. All right, that little band from Kansas who also call themselves Kansas, who got their start in the early 70s and are still going strong today. Lots of lineup changes over the years, but the kind of idea and focus of the band always has remained constant over the years, regardless of who was singing or who was playing guitar, keyboards, all that kind of stuff. You still have a couple of original members in the band today, and some pretty good music all throughout their career. So we're going to start off in the 70s, of course, the toughest decade to do because they've got so many classic albums that were released in the 70s, the absolute heyday of the band. But I'm going to go with what might be an obvious choice, but it's my favorite album of theirs of all time, and it edges out slightly a couple of their other albums in the 70s. I'm talking, of course, Left Overture. Got the glare there. There we go. There's the very wise man there with the little feather pen and the all the stuff he's writing and pondering and whatnot. Great album cover, great album. This was the album that really broke them here in the States. Of course, Carry On Wayward Son, The Wall, Miracles Out of Nowhere, Cheyenne Anthem, Magnum Opus, Questions of My Childhood, Opus Insert. Excuse me. It's early, guys. All sorts of great stuff on here. It's just a big sounding production of just bombastic progressive rock. There's hard rock on there. There's just, you got the big single and Carry On Wayward Son. Just a great album with wonderful keyboards, amazing Steve Walsh vocals, and Robbie Steinhardt as well. The violin, the scorching guitars, kind of has everything, right? It's just a classic album. So that's my pick for the 70s. Let's move into the 80s, right? Got a bunch of releases in the 80s. Some fine ones as well. A couple that I'm not crazy about, but for the most part, I like the 80s albums. But I'm going to pick the one that started off the decade, Audiovisions. Okay, this is, of course, the last album with Steve Walsh before he left for a little bit, eventually came back. So this still does have the classic lineup. I know for some people, they're not huge on this album because this kind of signaled the end of that kind of classic Kansas period, right? Monolith was a little bit of a drop-off in sales from Point of No Return from 77 to 79, and they start off the new decade with this album. This is less of a full-blown prog album, more of kind of like a more commercial-sounding hard rock record, but still some great stuff on here. Relentless is a killer song. Anything for You, awesome. You got the wonderful Hold On. Great kind of soaring ballady type track for the band. Definitely a long-standing favorite of the fans. Then you got Loner, which is great, big, heavy, hard rock song. Curtain of Iron, that's kind of cool proggy song, right? Very majestic sounding. You got the more hard rock anthem, Got to Rock On. Don't Open Your Eyes, good violin in that song, very cool proggy track. No One Together, another more melodic progressive song on here. No Room for a Stranger, that's more kind of like a bluesy hard rock song. And then of course you've got Backdoor to finish it all off. So I like this album. I think it's a good album. It's like I said, less of a full-on prog album and more of just a really good early 80s hard rock, melodic hard rock record. But it works, really works for me. All right, so we're going to go into the 90s now. Not a lot of albums, actually only 2 in the 90s, but I'm going to go with Freaks of Nature. So here, a little bit of a different lineup, right? You got some new guys in the band. Still sounds like Kansas. Pretty rockin' album, though. Pretty rockin' album. Here is where you're noticing Steve Walsh's vocals starting to take on more of a gruffer tone. This was probably the beginning of Steve starting to have issues with his vocals. But man, I just think it's, I Can Fly is a great song. Desperate Times, good, pretty heavy. Hope Once Again's got that classic Kansas sound. Black Fathom 4, killer song. Killer song. Freaks of Nature is good. Cold Gray Morning is big and heavy. It's just, a really good album top to bottom. Really solid, underrated Kansas album. Kind of when this kind of came out, this just kind of disappeared without a trace, but I know like a lot of us Kansas fans were very into this album, and I still listen to it and like it quite a bit. Definitely a heavier sound, but still, proggy enough. Got David Ragsdale, that's his first album with the band, on violin. Good stuff. All right, next up, we're going to go to the 2000s, which only have one, so by default, it's Somewhere to Elsewhere. This is, of course, pretty notable. You've got the involvement of Kerry Livgren on this album for the first time in many years. He was not on the Freaks of Nature album. Good album. Icarus 2 is really good on here. Byzantium is pretty good. Lot of engaging songs. It's not classic Kansas, but it kind of sounds like late 70s, early 80s. I think this sound is a little bit closer to like the Monolith era than anything else. There's a couple too many kind of bluesy things on here, but Look at the Time is pretty good. When the World Was Young, that's a really nice song. Good vocals by Steve Walsh on there. What else? Distant Vision's pretty cool. You got for the most part the classic lineup up here. On here you got Walsh, you got Livgren, you got Steinhardt, Rich Williams, Billy Greer, and Dave Hope on a couple tracks. And of course Phil E. Hart, as always, right? Gotta have Phil E. Hart. So that's my pick for the 2000s. And then I'm going to lump the 2010s, and they've got a release in 2020 as well. So I'm just going to kind of put them together here rather than just list each one separately. You've got the Prelude Implicit from 2016, the first album in 16 years. Of course, Ronnie Platt now behind the vocal mic. And then in 2020, The Absence of Presence. I like them both quite a bit, but I'm going to go with The Absence of Presence as my choice. This was the most recent one, like I said. Fantastic album. Really, really good album. This is even stronger than the one that came before, in my opinion. The title track is awesome. Tom Brislin on keyboards. Great player, of course. Throwing Mountains. Awesome song. Very memorable. Jets Overhead. Good rocker. You got Memories Down the Line. Really heartfelt, emotional track. Circus of Illusions. Big and proggy. Animals on the Roof. Another great song. Never. The Song the River Sang. Another good song. That one's sung by Tom Brislin. Okay, who does pretty good singer, but he's proving. I guess we'll see in time. Now when you really look at it, you've got Ronnie Platt lead vocals, you got Billy Greer on bass, who also is a really good singer, and in for many instances over the last 30 years, he has kind of taken the place of Robbie Steinhardt on many of the singing those old classics that Robbie sang. And now you got Tom Brislin, you throw him into the mix on keyboards, and he also has a really good voice as well. So you got some guys who can flat out sing in this band. But this is a really good, big sounding album, classic Kansas to me. Like this quite a bit, so that is my pick for the 2010s and on. So there you have it. So The Absence of Presence. All right, Somewhere to Elsewhere for the 2000s. Freaks of Nature for the 90s. There's the guys right there, in case you don't have this one. Highly recommend it. Audio Vision for the 80s, Audio Visions. And for the 70s, we're going to do a little Leftoverture, which just barely beats out Song for America and Point of No Return and the debut and Mask and some great albums in the 70s from this band. I even like Monolith quite a bit. So as you can tell, I'm a big fan. I love Kansas. Huge fan. So this. If I look at their whole discography, you can go back and watch the Rankin' the Album show I did. But there's really only there's 2 studio albums I'm not nuts about. The rest of them, I'm pretty much a big fan. So, and even the ones I'm not nuts about have some plenty of good material on there. So they're not complete failures, but I rank them a little lower than everything else. So there you have it. Tune in tomorrow, because tomorrow we're going to be talking about Yes, right? So tomorrow morning, stay tuned. We've got Neve, the prog nerd, coming on the show for the first time, along with Rand Kelly. All 3 of us are going to pick our favorite Yes albums through the decades. So that's coming up first thing tomorrow morning, so stay tuned for that. And what else we got? In the Prog Seat happening tonight. Favorite Epic Tracks Part 2. Join me and the crew as we go through some of our favorite 10-plus minute-long prog tracks. Okay, as we continue on with the really fun Tuesday night show in the Prog Seat. Tomorrow we've got probably a few What's Hot with Sea Tranquility shows. Wednesday is now going to be the new product review day here on the channel, so you'll get either one or multiple videos of new releases. All right, talking about new releases. Thursday, of course, is the Monsters Den. Friday at the Fun House with Martin Popoff is always Friday morning, so stay tuned for that as well. We're going to be talking about albums that are really front-loaded, where the front half, either the first side of the vinyl, the first half of the CD is power-packed with greatness, and then it kind of like takes a nosedive after that. So side B, or the second half, is kind of like, yeah, not quite. So we're going to be talking about some of those on Friday. And then all sorts of stuff coming up this weekend. Man, we've got ranking the albums of Blind Guardian this weekend, which is pretty cool. What else we got happening this weekend? Andy Edwards is coming back on the show from the UK. My buddy from the UK, the very notable musicians, play with a lot of great bands, coming back on the show this weekend. We're going to be ranking the studio albums of the Tony Williams lifetime and a top 10 solo albums from fusion bassist extraordinaire legend Stanley Clarke. So we got some fusion stuff happening on the channel this weekend, which is going to be lots of fun. Also, we've got coming up on Thursday, speaking of fusion, our interview with Scott Henderson, guitar legend Scott Henderson, who's played with Chick Corea and Joe Zawinul, and he's fronted Tribal Tech. So George Lemmy and I will be sitting down chatting with Mr. Henderson. Looking forward to that quite a bit. We've got Jeff Coleman, another great guitar player, coming on the channel next week. Cool interview with Jeff talking about his brand new album. So stay tuned for that next week as well. All sorts of good stuff happening, guys. So looking forward to all of it. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. If you want to make a donation, there's a link to the Ko-Fi page below. We've got a link to the merch page. All sorts of cool Sea Tranquility stuff there if you want to pick something up. And we'll see you later on, right? Take care. Bye-bye.